Today on the show,
We're talking about Nick Saban, aka our new senator for the U.S., who now has political opinions. And we'll see how that goes for the Tide.
And we're going to talk about the head of the Alabama Sheriff's Association and the concealed carry issue. You don't want to miss it.
it's going to be good. Welcome into Alabama Unfiltered. I'm one of your hosts, Scott Beeson. I'm with Amy Beth Shaver and Allison Sinclair. Ladies, how are y'all today?
We are good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Don't forget, you can watch this podcast at all the different places that you do, Spotify, YouTube, etc. Check it out at 1819news.com for other episodes, and we appreciate you watching. So let's just talk about the things that are going on in Alabama. That's what this show is about. And y'all are always so happy to be here. I appreciate y'all. I mean, they're smiling. They're setting up with posture and the whole nine yards. I'm
trying to
slunked
fake it.
over. It's just... well, let
I'm
me
gonna
get
pull it
started
together.
with what I think is the most controversial thing happening in the state of Alabama now, which is the head coach at the University of Alabama has decided to weigh in on national politics. Yes, Nick Saban has co-signed a letter to United States Senator from West Virginia, Manchin, trying to get him to pass what is commonly called in Washington, D.C., the voting rights bill, because apparently Americans don't have voting rights, and there's somebody somewhere that's being inhibited from voting somehow. And Nick Saban has weighed in. And I would just go ahead and tell you, from my radio show conversations, people are not happy. Allison?
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm like, is he ready to rewrite the entire Constitution? Does he not know that states' rights have the say in elections, and that's the way the Constitution is written? And I know he came out with a statement afterwards saying that he actually was in favor of keeping the filibuster, but you also have that whole mess that he stepped into it. And I just think, when was it, in 2019 or 2020, where he said he would never endorse a political candidate, he would stay out of politics, and I don't know what changed, but I just think he made a big mistake, and I think the university is going to hear about it, and it's just not a good look.
I don't know. The university is led by, there's a number of leftists. Now, I'm an alumni from the university. I love the University of Alabama. I can't remember a time in my life that I was not an Alabama fan. I think I was probably wrapped in an Alabama blanket when I was born. That was the swaddling clothes. It was crimson colored. And Amy Beth, I mean, I know you're from... Your family moved from somewhere else, but I think you're an Alabama person.
I'm an Alabama person. I'm an Alabama fan. I think I told the story, but when my family did move here, my mother asked the question, is Auburn in Alabama? So sorry.
Ouch.
But great place, great people. I do think he stepped in it because I think that it is an alert that we need a civics discussion like not just statewide, but nationwide. We also need to get to the bottom line, which is what is truth, and can we believe our lying eyes? Because we see people standing in line for COVID basically talking about voter suppression. Where is it? I need to see evidence of voter suppression. And if you want me to see evidence of your voter suppression, then I need you to see evidence of ours. Let's jump back to the most recent election. We saw that. Are we not supposed to believe that there weren't like boxes of things being moved around in the middle of the night and a water main broke in Atlanta?
Right.
Are we supposed to believe that? We also supposed to believe...
Yes, the answer would be yes.
Right?
We're supposed to believe that all those things are made up.
They're just completely made up except for the other side, right? And then we also have this issue of, okay, so you watch people roll up, do COVID testing, or stand in line for hours with an ID to get that COVID test, but we are suppressed in America, and we don't have the right to vote. So really, I think what we need to do is A, start civics classes all across the country, but B, ask people immediately for evidence of voter suppression if we're going to talk about it. Like,
That's
where
so true.
is it?
Like, who out there that wants to vote cannot vote? I don't know.
As far as I know, well, maybe they're illegal aliens, but every legal American citizen
and some dead people
has the ability to vote. Some dead people do. Some
122-years. There's lots of them
yes,
in Alabama.
you have to show up on election day. See, now I'm for going the completely different direction. I'm for we have national elections once every 2 years. You ought not be able to vote early. not even absentee, and you make that day important. And you show up, you show an ID, we make sure you live here, we make sure you are who you are, and that one day you vote. I mean, because, people will stand in line to go to a concert.
Right.
They will stand in line to get their COVID shot. They have IDs for everything. But you would think that once every 2 years, on one day, for 2 hours, and even some of these blue cities where it takes them 6 hours to vote, that's because they're incompetent. That's not because of the process.
That's right.
Don't you think it's fair to say, if it matters to you, you can show up on one day every 2 years and vote?
Yes,
I don't think
you can.
that's too big a load to haul,
I got it. So you're talking about 2 years.
You vote for Congress once every 2 years. Presidential
Okay.
elections every 4.
Okay.
Congress is
I
in the
thought
off
you
year.
were- okay. I thought
No.
you were changing the whole
No.
timeline. Okay.
I was
All right.
just saying
that was a different
that if
discussion,
it
but
doesn't
yes.
matter enough, then it really doesn't matter to you. Because a lot of this argument is, how do we get someone who never votes, who never cares? How do I go by his house and vote for him? Hey, don't you want to vote for the guy I'm working for? And I'll give you a gift certificate to whatever.
That's where
fast
we
food
are.
place, or we'll buy you a barbecue and some beer if you'll vote with us. I mean, I've been involved in politics. I know how some of these things are done.
Right.
And it's fascinating to me that we're literally talking about voter suppression when it does not exist. And to your point, Amy Beth, so you're basically saying, you're saying Nick Saban doesn't know what he's talking about.
I am saying that.
So he's not purposely. So, because that's just two questions. I mean, two
Right.
possibilities. He either doesn't know what he's talking about on this legislation, or he does know.
Right.
And
Which
he's
is
a
worse.
wokester leftist who wants to
Right.
destroy the republic, because the letter he co-signed on says our democracy
Right.
multiple times. And I think I've said on this show, that means something to the left. It doesn't mean what we think it means.
Does he know we're actually not a democracy?
No, people don't
Okay.
know. They do not
People
know.
look at you like you have a third head, not just two, but three. If you
Yeah, 'cause
remind them
that's far
that-
crazier.
It is, right? That we're a
Two's
representative
plausible.
republic. They're like, what? I'm like, yeah. You know what, you guys? I think this is working itself out. We probably should do a show on civics.
I would love that, actually. I think
I'm just going to tease our audience. Thank you for listening and watching. We will do a show about civics, and not just because I want to play the cartoon from 1984.
I'm just
a bill. Right. See that?
On Capitol
Carry on. I'm
Hill.
sorry.
No.
Also, you know what bothers me is the great Rush Limbaugh said this often, and yes, I was a Rush baby essentially, but there's a soft bigotry of low expectations, and we need to rail against that. That somehow you're less than, or you can't do it, or we just expect less from certain people. That is unacceptable. And that's what is so offensive to me in this whole voting rights, but really it's suppressing the voters they'd want.
It's a voter fraud
It's
bill.
a voter fraud bill. Right. That's exactly right. But that soft bigotry of low expectations is what infuriates
Do
me.
you think they really have that? Now, I think that white liberals are racist.
Yes.
They're elitist. They're racist. They see conservatives as, you're just an ignorant rube. You don't know any better. You're not as smart as I am. They have that one. And then they're like, and if we didn't look out for the people of color, they would have nothing.
Right.
That's literally the world they live in. But part of me has to believe that it's really not low expectations. It is full out, we're for committing fraud. They're like, well, of course they can get an ID. Of course they can go vote. Of course they can do all that. We're trying to commit fraud here. I think that's what they say behind closed doors.
I don't know if they would admit that it was fraud, but I think what they're going for is federalized everything, federalized elections, federalized police force. I think that's what,
Well, Barack Obama mentioned that at one time.
yeah, I think that's what, it's a socialist, global socialist movement. And I think that, before I would have thought they would have been kind of discreet and quiet about it. I don't think so anymore. I think that's pretty much out there. And it's like the constitutionalists of America against the post-constitutionalists. And that's really where we are. And it's scary. I feel like we're right at that edge of kind of losing everything. And I hate to say it, but it's like a make or break moment. And this bill that Saban...
So are you going with he didn't know any better? Are you going with that one?
I mean, I texted somebody yesterday. I was like, he's either clueless or a communist, and
Right.
neither option is good.
Because he's not a communist
but
when it
he's
comes to
like one of
football.
the
He
smartest
plays the
men.
best players.
Yes.
Okay, so here was a theory that someone called with, and y'all tell me
Okay.
what you think. He says, imagine that the only place he gets his news, he's coaching all the time, he's recruiting all the time, he's focused on football.
Okay.
A few years ago, he was asked about some political topic, remember? And he said, I don't know, and they just ripped him.
Right.
And he was like, well, I'm just coaching football. I don't pay attention to all. How could you not pay attention? I don't remember what that issue was. I wish I could remember. But his response was, I don't know, which means he doesn't pay attention. But what if he just gets his news from CNN? Or he gets the morning update from the New York Times? If that's the places you get your news, you absolutely think that Jim Crow has been resurrected from the dead, the Klan is on the march, and people are literally being held away at gunpoint from voting.
But is ignorance a defense? I mean, don't you have a huge amount of sway in the
And
nation?
you knew you were going to sign a letter, and you're
Right.
Nick Saban, and it was going to make national news.
Right.
So do your due diligence, do your research before you put your name out on something. You know, I know there were a lot of people when he marched with BLM,
Yeah.
you know, that had some questions about that. I don't think even then most of us really knew what BLM was. So I can kind of excuse maybe he didn't understand the underpinnings of the
Right.
Marxist kind of theme throughout
And
it.
some of
But-
us who are big football fans did the whole, well, you got to do that so that the other coaches aren't saying, look, Saban's terrible, he's horrible, we're down with the cause, and, you know, recruiting. So people kind of said, we'll give you one.
I
And
don't think
this
they're
one, I
given on
think,
this
got-
one.
No, they're not.
This has people
They're not, because we're fed up.
very
Yeah.
upset.
Yeah.
But but who's going to say something to him? The same board of trustees that has taken down, you know, monuments that have been there for 100 years. It says, hey, a bunch of Confederate soldiers went to school here and they were young kids and they died. Oh, we can't have that. I mean, that group's not going to stop anything or say anything.
I think that it sounds like a fatalistic thing to say, but it's not, because on the other side of it is hope, is no one's coming to save us. We are it. It's us. And so if we push back, if we make the phone calls, if we make sure that we know what's going on and continue to educate family and friends as pleasantly obtuse warriors, right, in the whole civics and just in our
Are you
nation,
calling me fat?
whatever.
She didn't say obese.
Oh, okay,
say
okay,
that. I
I'm
said
sorry.
obtuse.
I'm sorry.
Obtuse.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, just like when they want to come at us, we're like, no,
Right.
no. We see
We've had enough.
through what you're saying. We've had enough. Oh, by the way, if you see this I write on my hands. Little
So
fun
people-
fact about Amy Beth.
You want to go ahead
did
and read
wash
it so
my
no one
hands.
has to stop
Are you
it and
fine?
say,
Okay. I'm 5. So it says, first of all, go to the dry cleaners.
Yes.
Number 2, pick up dog collars. I have 3 dogs. They've escaped and may or may not have eaten some of my neighbors'
Does it say food?
clothing.
Don't forget food.
Petco, the dogs are hungry.
Yes.
After we're done here, I'm going to go to Publix before I meet my husband. So that's my list.
Those are there.
And
But it's a
I've
light
washed my
day, right?
hand.
Because if it's a very busy day, it's both hands.
That's true. And the reason I knew I was going to marry my husband was because he wrote on his scrubs. I was like, it's love at first sight. It's,
Right. And you thought.
It was love at
well,
first
you
sight.
actually
But we
said,
did like write on our
I'm
hands.
going to question
anyway.
that because you actually thought he can destroy a pair of scrubs every day by writing on them and buy new ones. He
I think
already
the
has money.
hospital issues them.
The
though.
hospital gives them.
Oh, okay, so it was
Especially when
free.
they're like,
It was
so,
socialist
like
scrubs.
not 2 pennies to rub
So-
together.
yeah.
They are
It's like-
socialist scrubs.
It's just a write-off.
And I tell you
Right
how,
off.
it's because
Right.
they were so short and my husband's very tall body that they
Right.
were free. So, yeah.
Are they like flood kind?
Well, they
Because
were
the
like
legs are
floods.
really short.
Now
so he has to wear
he can
boots.
pay
He can
his-
pay for
his own
extra long
scrubs.
Have them
Yeah.
like
We got them.
tailored.
Yeah.
Very nice.
So they are-
As you have this book in your lap, it
I
has
love
all these notes,
notes
too.
I love
Show the
to
cover
take
though. The
notes.
cover is the part that matters.
Same person.
Wonder Woman. Hey, that's
Look,
the old Wonder Woman. That's not the new.
It's
old
Linda
school.
Carter, of course.
Yes, she was
That's
probably
I
a
mean,
communist.
listen, I understand. She is not conservative. I had to come to grips with this, but as a child, I
Neither's
loved
Nick
her.
Saban, by the way.
Right.
No, not either. So will we believe in our heroes and let them be heroic in their area?
Yes.
Or will we just say, I'm done with you. I don't think we can be done with him, but I do think that we as a nation can be done with the nonsense that we're being forced to put up with every day. And they can call us conspiracy theorists, but then we can also say, but I need evidence. Give me your evidence right now on the spot.
Show me.
Show me.
Okay, great example. And I know this will probably bother Allison, but
Roll Tide.
John Merrill, who's the Secretary of State in Alabama,
Let's talk about John Merrill.
did what I thought was a very, very smart thing when he became Secretary of State. There was all this calls when we passed the voter ID bill. And we had tried to pass it when the Democrats were in charge and never could. And so we finally passed a voter ID bill, which is just so oppressive. And the thing that Merrill did when he was at Secretary of State, he said, look, there's not anyone here that cannot get an ID.
Right.
And the court was like, oh, no, I believe the leftist lawyers here. There's a little old person of color back here, and they can't even find them, but they can't get one. And he said, no, we'll send out mobile. You call our office, you contact our office. We will send someone to your house. We'll make a house call and make sure that you have an ID. And that really blew the whole argument up. So I think when you're saying that we should show us the proof. Show us where that is.
Right.
And if there is one person somewhere in the country, we'll do whatever it takes. We'll move mountains.
Right. We'll
to
take
make sure they can.
Right.
Airstream.
Yes.
Put it on the back of her super awesome Bronco, and we'll go. We will make sure, because nobody.
We'll pledge that from this show, Alabama
There you go.
Unfiltered.
Show. We're taking her Airstream and her Bronco, which
And
I
her
think
gas
is
card.
awesome.
I think
Yes.
it'll roll.
And
I
we'll
don't know.
make sure
I
that
might
you
need new
have an
tires.
ID. But nobody wants you to not be able to
1975.
vote.
Right.
I mean, so
No, I
what
don't
that
know.
does,
Maybe.
the
I don't
bottom
want
of the
dumb people
argument,
to vote.
and I also want dead people to vote. But the bottom of the argument is that, I don't know, that people are helpless and they're the victim.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this is another low expectations. We can't.
Okay,
help
let me
ourselves.
ask
For
that
the
one.
love of all that's
Right,
good and
the
holy.
low-
Stop with that.
Yes.
Just stop it.
If someone out there can't figure out how to get an ID, do they need to vote?
No. But I'll help
Allison's
you get an
gonna
ID.
struggle. Amy Beth and I are like, no.
No, I mean they have IDs. They drive. They buy cigarettes. They buy alcohol. They get COVID tests. That's such a false narrative. It's really just a terrible argument. And even though John Merrill's mobile ID unit scares me a little bit because there's a lot of potential for fraud in that as well. Like he can just poof, create an
He could
ID.
probably do that from the office, though. He doesn't have to have the mobile thing for that.
That's a whole other show. But anyway, it's just a false argument. It really is. That let's have the argument based on something else. It should not be that IDs are holding people back from voting. That's just not true.
No.
Unless you're illegal.
Or you're not really who
And-
you say you
right,
are.
right,
There
that's
was a story in
Or you're
Alabama,
dead.
and then I know we've got to move on, but there was a story in Alabama from a few years back where a guy was apparently caught for voting in multiple places. But the sad thing was that the place he was caught, he shows up and he's like, I want to vote. And they're like, no, you're not on the roll. And he's like, no, I want to vote. And well, no, you're not on. I have a right to vote. And he's just going off, and they're like, no, you can't vote here. You're not supposed to vote here. And he finally blurts out something along the lines is, they let me vote in the last three places.
Oh, my.
Oh.
So it was kind of out then that
Okay.
there were places that are like, oh, if you want to vote, well, we'll just fix it up
Here's
for
your
you and let you
provisional
have a
ballot.
ballot.
Okay.
Because you might be voting for the right person. It's that kind of stuff that has to be stopped.
Oh, it happens all the time.
And
All the time.
And I think that's a great job for people who are waking up and they're like, wait, what's going on here? I want to be involved.
Right.
Okay. Get involved with the local, get involved with another friend of ours group, Thatcher Coalition, but get involved and sign up to be a poll watcher.
Absolutely.
Like that's first thing. If you want to do something, get involved. Then go become a poll watcher, and you can help things like this.
So how do you
not
get in touch with the
happen.
two different groups you're talking about? Local, how does someone find local?
So
That's your
local,
organization?
you can find us localalabama.org, and then Thatcher Coalition. Do you know their
I think it's thatchercoalition.com.
.com? And then I
I'll
will
find
say Shelby County actually is about to roll out a class and some instruction on how to be a poll watcher, and do some stuff. I'm sure other counties as well. But
And people need to understand they need to be volunteering to be poll watchers in places that need to be watched.
That's exactly right.
Now, look,
I would argue that's everywhere.
well, no, I will agree, but there are places where more fraud occurs than others. Because, like my polling place,
Right.
I have lived there since I was 7. I was the House member from there for 8 years. I was the senator from there for 8 years. I went to school there. I go to church there. Everybody knows me. So I walk in the place. They're like, hey, Scott, how are you? I'm like, hey, yeah, Joe, Jen, how are y'all? Yeah, handshake. Hey. Get all the way to the place. The little lady gives me a hug, turns around, gets in her seat, and goes, let me see your ID.
Nice.
I like
That
it.
is security.
I like it.
You know what I'm saying?
She needs to be in charge
Well
of
done.
all the elections.
Absolutely, because she's like, that's the rules. You have to show my ID. She's like, you need to show your ID, Scott. Is this your new address? You weigh a little more than this. I mean, they.
Did she
Right.
say you're looking obviously more
She said I'm looking a
obtuse?
little old and obtuse. Yes, you're clearly obtuse because this weight is not right. And when are you going to start putting gray on your hair instead of not black anymore? That lady. But I'm saying, if they're that strict with people they know, they're taking it very, very seriously.
Because I think the other thing that it does is it respects each individual person. It shows great respect if we're asking you to prove who you are, because we believe you are of such worth as an individual. We want to make sure no one else can come
That
in and
yours
take
matters.
away your vote and your voice. So it shows great respect instead of what we're being told, which is, well, they're helpless, they're victims, whoever these people are, whoever the great they are, that we need to start asking people to prove who
Who are they? Yes.
We're saying no. We have great respect for you as a human, which is why we want to validate who you are so you are heard. That's dangerous. That is
Absolutely.
a dangerous thing.
And then those people realize, you're right. It frames it differently. It says, hey, you have value. You are valuable. What you say, your vote matters. That's very good. You just need to drop the mic on that one. But because here's the other thing, and then we got to change, is, I knew people who were registered to vote. They register them, at high school or whatever, who never voted. And there's no leftist in this country that would be pleased if I said, hey, I'm friends with the poll workers. I'm going to go in and vote for Tony, because I know Tony's not showing up. But if Tony showed up, he'd vote with me because he's going to do what I say. So let me just vote for Tony. And they'll be like, no, you can't do that. That's all that we're stopping. We're keeping Scott Beeson from voting for Tony. Now, is Nick Saban still against it? Probably.
We should have a
It's a
conversation
sad
with
day.
him.
Yeah.
It's like a sad day of mourning
It really
when that
is.
happens.
It just-
And now, let me make it a little bit darker. One more question. Is there any chance that he has the attitude of, you know what, Alabamians are stupid and I really don't care that they're all conservative. I'm going to weigh in? Because he does kind of preach to us sometimes about not cheering enough or leaving a game early or too high expectations. I mean, it is a little bit of...
I would go with that. It's more, you're in your ivory tower. I mean, you look at like Bill Clinton and, a lot of
he
politicians.
let a lot of girls in his ivory tower.
Well, I mean, that's what I'm
It wasn't
saying,
that
like, you
lonely in
think-
his tower.
I'm saying, whole other podcast. I'm saying you are up here.
you
You
keeping a
kind of
list?
don't know what's happening down here,
Right.
and you feel like your world is yourself,
Right.
and you think you're untouchable. And I just think he played himself. He played his cards a little too much this time, and he's probably very much out of touch with reality, to be honest. And if you have all those friends from West Virginia that send you a letter and they're people that you trust, and you're like, oh, well, I mean, and then if you don't sign it, they're going to rail against you.
Right.
Oh, Nick Saban had a chance to sign this, but
Right.
he's a racist because he didn't. Well, I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of tired of giving people the benefit of the doubt. And since I'm an Auburn fan, I really don't.
Oh, well, there's going to be a little sports journalist, some little nitwit journalist who's going to go to Auburn's coach. What's his name?
Harsin.
Harsin, who I like, actually.
Yeah.
And is going to say, well, Nick Saban said he's for people having their voting rights. Where are you? And so now all these coaches have to answer because Nick Saban went out and
You just
said
quote Nick
something.
Saban like he said in 2020. I'm not going to comment on political things, just like Harsin did with the vaccine.
Right.
It's none of your business if I got the vaccine
I
or
know,
not.
which is one of the reasons I like him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's
I
awesome.
mean, so I don't know,
More of that,
plead the
please.
fifth. I
More
think
of
that
that.
works.
I agree. All right, next topic for today.
I'm nervous now.
Another Alabama issue that you would not think this happens in Alabama. But looking at the Alabama legislature, looking at our statewide elected officials and how they don't seem to have a good understanding for the Constitution, and you think, how is that possible? This is the reddest of the red states. We find out that the president, chairman, whatever, of the Alabama Sheriff's Association dislikes the Second Amendment so much that he would be fine with amending it to say that the only time you or I or anyone can have a gun is to defend your home. Not in your car when you're traveling, not somewhere where you go someplace dangerous, not when your wife or your daughter or your son is having to travel somewhere with their newborn baby at night in the middle of the night in the driving rain and the snow and going uphill both ways. You can't have it anywhere. And he's the leader of the Alabama Sheriff's Association. Allison's already revved up. She breathed in deep twice before I even asked her.
It's unreal because I think his argument was that it wasn't meant for roads. Like, we didn't have cars back when the Constitution was written. Well, did you take your gun on your horse?
Right. That's exactly what
I'm pretty sure they did.
Yes.
You know, like if you were
And
walking down to the town square,
Right.
did you take your gun for the shootout over the gold in the Wild Wild West?
Isn't
I mean, all the
car-
movies say they
isn't
did.
car short for carriage?
Yes,
That's what I thought.
it is.
Yeah.
So
I mean, what? Oh, I'm getting in my carriage. Let me
Right.
go tuck my. I guess they didn't have.
I've always
like,
said George
AR-15.
Washington. I said this on the show the other day on the radio show. I said, George Washington, I can imagine it right now. He said, Martha, we can't take my pistols because I don't have a permit from the sheriff. That's what he said.
It's exact. How did you know?
I know. I
It's
read
like
it
written,
in a biography.
You know, at Mount Vernon.
Marsha?
It's hanging on the wall as a tapestry.
It was
Because
in
they didn't give me a
What's
permit.
the 1619 new? What's the one that the liberal thing?
Oh,
not 18.
yeah.
What
Of
is
1619
1619
project.
project.
Yeah.
We're 1819.
Yeah.
We are.
That's 1619.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. It was that was
Glad
the
you
history book I
clarified.
got there from.
What
Thank
is
you
it
for that.
I bet
Martha?
Martha stitched it. You know how your grandmother
She
used to
did.
make those
Yes.
little stitch,
The
cross
little
stitch
cross
things
stitch
that go on the wall?
Which didn't that drive you crazy
Don't
when you
forget
tried to
to
learn how
put
to
up
do
your
that?
pistol.
Anyway, I mean, the bottom line is it's about the heart of man and who gets to control it. Either God controls it and we have freedom, or another man or woman controls it and we have these rules and regulations. God left us with 10 commandments and now we've invented millions of laws. So
Yeah, we're not even good at the 10.
we're not even good at the 10. And so, you know, ultimately it is about, again, it comes back to the issue of respect. We respect our families. We respect each other so much that we want to protect our people. And you, sir, want to protect whoever is paying you off. Like, I need to know, like, what kind of money is behind that organization. I saw a few little tidbits. I want to read more about it, but I was astounded that the head of the Sheriff's Association, like, said the quiet part out loud. Buddy, like, do you not know who you're supposed to represent and what state you're living in? Obviously not.
So I was the sponsor when I was in the Senate of when this kind of kicked off. I had one of the big gun reform bills when I was there, which was not to limit, but was to try to keep municipalities and counties and frankly judges in the state from trying to prosecute anybody and everybody because they were against guns and firearms and stuff. And part of the argument then was I didn't understand all of these people who were opposed to my citizens, my constituents being able to defend themselves. And I would have these questions like, are y'all for the Second Amendment? And oh, absolutely. Now I know they're really not.
No, they're not.
They are for them having firearms and us not, where they might be able to show up and, you know, look over the dead body with a firearm on their sides. I don't understand that thought. And I do want to say that rank and file sheriff's deputies, the deputies, rank and file police officers, they want their families protected. We want our families protected. I think they're for the Second Amendment. They're for getting the bad guys and leaving the good guys alone. But some of these people literally don't think you and I have a God-given right to defend ourselves. And it is out in the open. It's clear now. And they're working with leftist organizations.
Right.
Big money leftist organizations to make sure a state like Alabama is not a constitutional carry state, which, by the way, I think we really are already.
Right.
But we have judges who are also anti-Second Amendment, and you'll never figure out how. But our Constitution is clear twice. that we're a constitutional carry state, and we still have gun law enforcement.
But it also goes back to money. I mean, really, I have to fill out my pistol permit, and I'm like, okay, 5 years. Actually, this year, I only did 1 year because I was like, well, if they go to constitutional
I don't
carry,
wanna
I'll
lose
save
that
my
money.
$80, you know?
I haven't
Play in the system.
renewed mine yet.
But, I mean, it's a revenue stream for them, and that's really what it goes back to. And
Oh, they told me that back in the day.
Timmons?
It's
Bobby
Timmons. Yes, Bobby Timmons.
You know, he's going to back it up by saying, like, Second Amendment only applies to your house. That's the dumbest thing. Like, really? That's Nick Saban. You don't know the Constitution kind of stuff.
That is never read the Constitution, has no idea what the Second Amendment actually says, what its intent is. And it's funny because that one was one of the new ones. I'd really not thought of that one. Most people go with at least you can protect yourself. Then some people go with, it's for hunting. Yeah, that's another one of George Washington's. Honey, Martha, we need an amendment because somebody might try to keep me from hunting. I mean, no,
Right.
It was defend ourselves from a tyrannical government.
Right.
It was in defense of the state.
Right.
Otherwise, we're Australia.
I
Like
literally
that.
was about
Yeah.
to say that.
Like
Also,
that.
mic drop on that because my husband many times over this
Oh, where your
whole
pen went.
pandemic Shazam. Here, you want to drop it again? Has said, what would happen if Australians hadn't given up their guns?
They would not be in the
Not that
position
we're
they are.
spoiling for a fight, but they would think twice. Or Austria, they would think twice before sending them to lockdown. Number two, about the whole living in a whole nother world, I think that it's okay for these people to make these edicts and issue them because they do have protection. They do have their own entourage. Any of the, celebrities that you see, they've got their people. They've always got their people. But they
live
don't
in super nice places, super protected
Right.
places, super safe places, and they're telling what all of us regular people down there somewhere, y'all, you don't need that. I don't need that.
Right.
It's just
It's getting harder and harder not to consider that they view the world through the lens of a Marxian view. It's really getting harder and harder. Like you have to not want to see that.
Right.
no, I
if you're
agree.
looking at
because I'm for a dictatorship
right
as long as I'm
Sure.
the dictator.
Sure.
And
Who doesn't want to be their own dictator? Of your own little fiefdom.
I want a big fiefdom.
So what's the solution? I mean, if they do pass constitutional carry, which I think they will, there's like 40 co-sponsors on Andrew
But the
Sorrell's bill.
leadership is temporary. The speaker's not running again, and he could
But
go
they're
ahead.
going to pass it this
He could go ahead
session.
and kill it. Hey, they might.
I mean, I really think
They've
they
been
will.
going to pass it for a long, long time. They need to. They better, and I hope you're right. But it would be very easy for a speaker who's not going to be there next time to
Right.
go, "You're not passing it while I'm here."
Or
Be
if he's
very
really
easy.
for it, he could be like,
I mean, I had a
I'm not gonna
commitment.
be
I had
here.
a handshake commitment that we were going to pass this when I was in
That
the
means
legislature.
nothing in Montgomery.
Oh no, you got to be kidding! From the former Speaker of the House, handshake, done deal. We're going to pass it, and then he sabotaged it in committee. Had someone else do it for him, and then when I started to punish that person, they're like, man, dude, he told me he made. I'm like, oh, okay, it's out now. I see. See
Yeah.
how this game is played.
Right.
I'm still punishing you.
So what is the answer? If we do pass a constitutional carry bill,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is coming, what are there parameters? Is it a free for all? Do you put in what is it like a driver's
It's not going.
license?
It's
Do
not
you
going.
apply
It's not
once
going to
and-
change hardly anything. The only thing substantial it will change is that you will not have to pay to have your pistol in your car. That is almost the only change that is going to occur. Now, what we have to watch out for is they start trying to limit the places you can carry. They start trying to make that list longer. When we did the bills when I was there, I tried to shrink it to nowhere. And leadership wanted to add a couple of places. Well, as soon as they added a couple of places, you end up with UAB, claiming that, we have a mental health facility somewhere on campus, so none of our nurses can have a gun in their car when they come to work, and all this kind of junk. So you just have to be very careful. Someone says, yeah, but should you be able to carry it in the library? And a bunch of senators all go, oh, no, somebody might carry it in the library. And then you get library, then you get bank, then you get child care facility, then you get this, then you get
Picture
that.
in a librarian.
Yes, load it up.
I'm
Should be
here.
it'd be better.
But what is
At least in the library, you can hear it when they're.
that would be, yeah, that'd be
But what I'm saying is, they could very easily pass constitutional carry, and really mess it up by adding all sorts of exemptions.
Which would you expect anything less than that?
No, I would not.
Let's refer to the marijuana bill and see how they can mess things up. That's a whole other discussion, I think. But what is, if the premise is we're endowed with a right by the Constitution to carry, how do you lose that right? Like, what are the circumstances that is if you've committed a felony, if you've committed a misdemeanor?
And some of those things are going to remain in place. That's what's been weird about this.
So none of that changes.
I don't think any of that is going to change. Because those things will still be there. That's why I think the biggest change will be whether or not you have to have a permit to have a pistol in your car. Little thing that people don't know. And it's one of those things you're like, okay, don't go out and publicize this because some crazy person. But I asked the sheriffs when I was there, I'm like, why are you so against me, one of my citizens or me having a pistol in my car when I can drive around with a gigantic, let's do AR-15 so people will be terrified. An AR-15 on the dash of my car. I can have a giant goose gun on the dash of my car. I'm driving around. It's right there. Everybody can see it. I can do that today. But I can't carry a pistol. And see, people don't know that.
You can't put it under your seat.
And when you tell people that, so the part of the other question was, well, what if I put the pistol on the car so it's not concealed? It's up on the dash. Oh, no. As soon as that door is closed, it's concealed. Now you're a criminal. See, people don't get how this goes. So I even asked, I said, well, could a guy carry his gun on a horse? And they're like, yes, Senator. And I'm like, well, then what's the difference in a horse and an iron horse, which is a motorcycle? Can I have it on my side? No, that's a vehicle. Oh, so the motorcycle is different than the horse, which is back to back to George Washington.
It's just funny. It's
all how we're going to screw this
So
up.
it's about dollars.
Yeah.
But here's the thing that people ought to realize. When Tennessee made this change, their sheriff said the world was going to come to an end and they won't have any money.
He did.
Tennessee didn't lose money because people still wanted to be able to put it in their coat, under their jacket, in their pants, which is concealed. The whole 9 yards. So that argument's not true. Now, if somebody does lose revenue, what are they not going to buy? They're not going to buy armored personnel carriers. They're not going to be able to buy, they look like some of these deputies look like special forces.
Right.
We don't need to militarize every, rural sheriff's department in the state. And that's what a lot of this pistol money is. It's play money. It's let's buy goodie money. Let's buy fun thing money.
That's fascinating. I mean, that's really helpful to know your insiders, like to have that insider's knowledge is really, really helpful.
I just think people are shocked to know what you can do today.
Right.
And then what you're limited to do, what you have to pay for.
Well, then I'm going to go get a goose gun. And I'm going to keep it and a horse.
That's what I'm thinking.
You want one more interesting thing of history?
Yes.
Used to, everybody carried in the open. And the proper etiquette was, hey, if you got a gun, I need to be able to see it, which made sense. They thought only crooks, criminals, and shysters would try to hide it. So then to partially regulate that, they said, hey, if you're going to hide it, we need a couple of people to testify that you're of good character. The sheriff will say, yeah, he's a good guy. You now can hide your pistol. That's how we ended up with concealed weapon permits. Wow. And nowadays, everybody's such a snowflake. They're like, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. You better hide it. You better have it covered. I don't even want you to know. So we have totally flipped. So now if you're the guy with it on your side where everybody can see it, now you're a criminal, crook, shyster, need to be watched. When 100 and something years ago, it was the person trying to hide it was the criminal shyster. And we've just completely changed.
So back to even before we were recording, we need to go back to dueling and draw fights.
We may have to do that another time. But Amy Beth, Allison, thank you for being with us. And all of y'all watching, don't forget you can watch this program, Alabama Unfiltered, on all the different places you find your favorite podcasts. Please tell people about it. Please like it and share it because we really want to spend more time with you, and we hope this program grows. Thank you for being with us.